The lecture hall of the Stellar Defense Academy was nearly empty, the final class of the term winding down. Professor Krell, a seasoned expert in interspecies relations and military strategy, stood at the front of the room, a satisfied gleam in his eye. He had been eagerly awaiting this moment all year, and it was finally time to share his most crucial lesson with the cadets. Before we conclude, Krell began, his voice taking on a more serious tone, there is one final piece of advice I want to give you. It's something I've been looking forward to discussing. We've covered many species known for their combat capabilities, but there's one in particular that warrants special attention. Remember this well. Never, under any circumstances, provoke the human species. The cadets shifted in their seats, intrigued by the shift in tone. Krell continued. Human beings are unlike any other species we've studied. While other warrior races might have powerful armies, strict honor codes, or be driven by paranoia, humans are in a class all their own. They are natural designers of weapons, something that sets them apart in the most dangerous way. As Krell spoke, several students raised their hands, eager to ask questions. Krell savored this moment. It was one of his favorite parts of the lecture. He called on a student in the front row. Yes. What's your question? Professor, the student asked, I notice there's a species on this list that seems out of place. Why are humans included? Krell's smile widened, revealing a hint of mischief. Ah, humans. They defy categorization. There are various types of warrior races. Those with militaristic governments, those driven by codes of honor, and those who are inherently suspicious. Humans, however, are unique. They fall into a different category altogether, natural innovators of weaponry. The students exchanged curious glances, and Krell could see their interest piqued. Let me illustrate with a memorable example, he said, pacing slowly. A few years ago, we had a human exchange student in our advanced weapons design course. While most students design conventional firearms, rifles, submachine guns, shotguns, this particular student created something truly extraordinary. What did he create? A student asked, leaning forward. A chainsaw cannon, Krell announced, his voice filled with dramatic flair. This weapon was capable of firing chainsaw blades at supersonic speeds. It could launch up to 20 blades per second, each spinning at 7,000 RPM. The blades would ricochet through the room, tearing through anything less than 5 centimeters thick of solid material. A murmur of disbelief ran through the room. Krell watched their reactions with satisfaction. The demonstration was so shocking that chainsaw cannons were subsequently banned under universal warfare regulations for being excessively brutal. The students sat in stunned silence as Krell continued, his voice rising with intensity. And if you think that's extreme, consider this. A group of human engineers, working on a hobby project, designed a weapon capable of destroying an entire planet. They figured out how to use antimatter to create a beam powerful enough to obliterate a planet. The entire setup was remarkably cost-effective, simply because it was, in their words, cool. Krell's expression grew more intense as he leaned in closer. Humans are also known for their innovative, often horrifying creations. For instance, they developed a bomb that liquefies everything within its blast radius, turning it into glass. The entire concept began as a joke, a twisted play on words about nuclear annihilation. The cadets were now fully engaged, their attention riveted on Krell. He continued, his voice dropping to a grim whisper. Just this year, while researching potential cures for neurodegenerative diseases, human scientists accidentally discovered a strain of bacteria that specifically targets and destroys parts of the nervous system. This is possibly the most terrifying biological weapon ever conceived, and it happened by accident. Krell paused for a moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. If civilians can create such horrors in peacetime, imagine what their military might develop in wartime. And don't even get me started on their experimental mechs. These are not just machines. They're designed to be devastating. He straightened up, his expression serious. That concludes today's lecture. Keep in mind, if you ever encounter humans, it's not just their weapons you should fear, but their boundless creativity in devising new ways to cause destruction. Stay alert, stay cautious, and remember, their innovation can be your undoing. With that, Professor Krell ended the session, leaving the students to contemplate the extraordinary and unsettling capabilities of humanity. As the students filed out of the lecture hall, the air buzzed with a mixture of unease and fascination. The gravity of Professor Krell's warnings hung heavily in their minds. Many had initially dismissed the notion that humans could pose a serious threat, but Krell's examples had changed their perspective. In the days following the lecture, the cadets were seen discussing the implications of the human innovations in hushed tones. Some were fascinated by the creativity and ingenuity of human weaponry, while others were deeply unsettled by the potential for destruction that such innovations represented. The Academy Simulation Lab was abuzz with activity as the students began to apply their new knowledge. They ran simulations of hypothetical encounters with human forces, testing various defensive strategies against the kinds of weapons Krell had described. The simulations were designed to be as realistic as possible, replicating the chaotic environment of a battlefield where human ingenuity could turn the tide of conflict in unexpected ways. One student, Lieutenant Mira Hart, took a particular interest in the human-designed weapons. She spent hours analyzing the technical details of the chainsaw cannon and the antimatter beam, trying to understand the mechanics behind these fearsome inventions. Her fascination was driven by a desire to anticipate and counteract such threats. In her free time, Mira and her peers gathered in study groups to debate the ethical implications of using such advanced weaponry. They examined historical